Every day, thousands of ships pass through a narrow stretch of water in the Middle East, carrying fuel that powers cities, industries, and entire economies. Nearly 1/5 of the world's oil flows through this route, and one country sits right beside it. A country that empires, superpowers, and rival nations have tried to influence for over a century. That country is Iran. But why does this one country matter so much to the entire world? To understand Iran, you have to start with geography. Iran sits at the crossroads of the Middle East, Central Asia, and South Asia. For thousands of years, trade routes passed through this region, connecting civilizations from China to Europe. Whoever controlled Iran could influence the movement of goods, armies, and ideas across. At the start of the 20th century, Iran was weak, politically unstable, and deeply in debt. Its ruler at the time, Mozaffar ad-Din Shah Qajar, was desperate for money. In 1901, he signed a deal that would shape Iran's future for decades. A British entrepreneur named William Knox Darcy was granted the exclusive right to search for oil across most of Iran. The deal is known as the Darcy Concession. The concession lasted 60 years. It covered almost 3/4 of Iran's territory. Iran would receive only 16% of the profits from oil extraction. The company controlled exploration, production, and exports. For Iran, it meant that one of its most valuable resources was essentially controlled by a foreign company. For Britain, it meant access to a massive new energy supply. In 1908, oil was discovered in southwestern Iran in a place called Masjid Soleiman. Soon after, the British created a company to control the oil fields, Anglo-Persian Oil Company. Oil from Iran quickly became vital to the British Empire. The British government even bought a major share in the company to secure fuel for the Royal Navy. But while oil wealth flowed out of Iran, many Iranians felt their country received very little in return. The resentment slowly grew, and eventually it would explode. By the early 1950s, a new political leader rose to power, Mohammad Mossadegh. Mossadegh was a nationalist who believed Iran should control its own resources. In 1951, he nationalized Iran's oil industry, taking control away from the British-owned Anglo-Persian Oil Company. Inside Iran, Mossadegh became extremely popular. But in London and Washington, the decision caused alarm. Britain feared losing its oil supply. The United States feared that political instability might push Iran closer to the Soviet Union during the Cold War. So in 1953, British intelligence and American intelligence worked together. The operation involved Britain's MI6 and the United States Central Intelligence Agency. Their covert mission was called Operation Ajax. Through propaganda, political pressure, and orchestrated protests, Mossadegh was removed from power. Iran's monarch, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, was restored to full authority. From that moment on, Iran became a key ally of the United States in the Middle East. Under the Shah, Iran began to modernize rapidly. Cities expanded, infrastructure improved, industry grew. The Shah launched sweeping reforms known as the White Revolution, aimed at transforming Iran into a modern industrial state. But the pace of change created deep tensions. Many religious leaders believed Western influence was eroding traditional culture. Political opponents were often silenced by the Shah's powerful secret police, known as Savak. Economic growth also failed to benefit everyone equally. For many Iranians, modernization felt imposed from above and supported by foreign powers. Resentment once again began to grow. In 1979, that anger erupted. Mass protests swept across the country. The Shah fled Iran, and a revolutionary movement led by Ruhollah Khomeini took control.
Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini.
What maketh the man? The face of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, his stern brow and charismatic presence are known the world over. His words strike a chord in the heart of many Iranians, and what he did changed history, shifting the balance of power in a way no one would have thought possible.
The country that had once been one of America's closest allies in the region suddenly became one of its strongest rivals. In 1979, Iranian students stormed the United States Embassy in Tehran. They captured 52 American diplomats and held them hostage for 444 days. Just a year later, in 1980, neighboring Iraq, led by Saddam Hussein, invaded Iran. The war lasted 8 years, killing hundreds of thousands of people. Neither side truly won, but the conflict left Iran isolated and economically damaged. After the Iran-Iraq War, Iran knew it could not rely on the West for security, so Iran began building influence. In Lebanon, Iran supported Hezbollah, a powerful armed group that became a major force in the region. In Syria, Iran backed the government during the civil war. In Iraq, Iran developed close ties with political groups and militias after the fall of Saddam Hussein. And in Yemen, Iran has been accused of supporting the Houthi movement. Through these connections, Iran gained influence across the Middle East, even without being the strongest military power. In the 2000s, tensions rose again, this time over Iran's nuclear program. Iran said its nuclear research was for peaceful energy, but the United States and several European countries feared the program could lead to nuclear weapons. It would dramatically change the balance of power in the Middle East. Western nations imposed heavy economic sanctions. These sanctions limited trade, reduced oil exports, and damaged Iran's economy. After years of negotiations, an agreement was reached in 2015. It placed limits on Iran's nuclear activities in exchange for lifting some sanctions. But the agreement did not end the distrust. Disputes continued, and tensions between Iran and the West remained high. And because Iran sits beside one of the most important oil routes in the world, any conflict involving Iran can quickly become a global crisis. And that is exactly what is happening right now. The United States and Israel carried out strikes on Iranian-linked military targets, saying the attacks were meant to slow down Iran's growing missile and nuclear capabilities. Several key facilities and senior commanders connected to Iran's military network were reportedly hit. Iran responded quickly. Missiles and drones were launched toward US military bases in the Persian Gulf. The conflict did not stay between two countries. It began spreading across the Middle East. But Iran has something many countries do not. Right next to Iran lies one of the most important shipping routes on Earth, the Strait of Hormuz. Nearly 1/5 of the world's oil passes through this narrow waterway. Iran does not need to conquer the world to affect it. It only needs to control this passage. And that is why Iran matters. Not just because of its military, not just because of its politics, but because of where it sits on the map.